we talk about who won, first let's talk about who lost, and that's us, the fans. I think this is going to go down as one of the most disappointing Comic-Con displays since Comic-Con became the mega deal that it is today. It's just so unfortunate. I don't know what spurred the decision of the studios to be so short on reveals and public releases. I mean, they showed much more to those in attendance, but that just, that's a very short-term strategy. And while I applaud them for wanting to give something unique to those who made the trip to San Diego, the purpose of this convention isn't to reward those in San Diego. It's to make a splash with the media, with fans globally. And I think that the convention and every studio that presented here failed almost at every level in that regard. So the winner obviously is DC. I think they did the best job of playing the game. They had a release, the Wonder Woman official poster, and thankfully a lot of footage leaked, or pictures at least, leaked from their Hall H presentation. I covered the stills from the Batman v Superman clip yesterday, and I think we got a really good look at that Batman armor, which was interesting to see. And they had the photo op. And for the first time in the past, DC hasn't played that game. Avengers, that's why it's not as impressive. They did it for Avengers 2 because they already had their big photo op of the team. But here we got to see DC's Trinity. For the first time, not only in the flesh with those actors together, but as I said in my coverage of that panel yesterday, for the first time in cinematic history that they're ever going to be put together in such a way. So that was exciting. History was, I think, very quietly made that day. I think the fanfare could have been bigger, and I by no means, by declaring DC the winner, feel that they aced their Hall H presentation. But at least they essentially came to play, which is more than I can say for anyone else. Now, interestingly, second place, it doesn't go to Marvel. I would have to say it goes to Legendary. Legendary is becoming a huge contender, and I think they really got a lot of attention for themselves when they announced that Skull Island movie. Of course, Skull Island is the home of King Kong, and it's yet another monster movie, another kaiju film for a studio, well, not a studio, a production company. Now their deal is with Universal, which really knows how to hit them out of the park. And because they're in charge of Jurassic World, etc., I have more faith in those properties, because I just feel Legendary knows what they're doing. So, of course, the Skull Island announcement really surprised everyone. It would have been nice to have some artwork to go along with it, but of course, nothing. And then they had the Godzilla 2 announcement, which I thought was very encouraging. I think most of us would like to see that continue, just with the correct adjustments made, as I discussed yesterday in my coverage of that announcement. But I have to say, after having thought about it for about 24 hours or so, I wouldn't have stuck with Gareth Edwards. I mean, with all due respect, I think he handled some things quite nicely, but some things he really did not do well. So I don't see why you would wait so long for him, because he's doing the Star Wars film next, to have him make something else for Legendary. Get this Godzilla project rolling, and perhaps some new blood behind the camera is just what it needs to reinvigorate it and fix the mistakes that were, so obvious when you looked at the final product. So, because right now, Star Wars, the spinoff that he's working on, is slated for 2016, so when does that mean we're getting Godzilla 2? You just can't wait that long. Also, I think Legendary, they failed to make a real impression with Crimson Peak. There's better stills that came on, there are online, that came out prior to Comic-Con. Now, I have to give points to Legendary for their experience at the convention, their booth. They had a situation where you could virtually drive a Jaeger. I thought that was interesting. Although I think they need to work a little bit on their presentation, just having people sitting in folding chairs with virtual reality goggles on in the middle of the convention floor. I don't know how immersive that experience is, but you know what? At least they were trying. And also they had a gallery apparently for Crimson Peak, which they've done a very good job of keeping under wraps what's inside there. And I have to say, Crimson Peak, the more I see of it, that it's about this scary house, makes me feel that it's very reminiscent of Lock and Key, which a lot of people are hoping will eventually get to the big screen. And it's being worked on. It failed as a television pilot. Now it's trying to be a movie, but Crimson Peak could be the final nail in the coffin for that project. Unless it does really well, and Hollywood loves a copycat movie. But I think Lock and Key deserves better than that. Also, Guillermo del Toro did confirm that Crimson Peak, he wants to tell a story with a strong female lead, Mia Wasikowska, who of course is well known for being Alice from Tim Burton and Johnny Depp's Alice in Wonderland. But I have to, so I'm curious as to whether or not that will follow in the footsteps box office-wise of Frozen and Maleficent, and even Lucy, which is tearing up the box office this weekend, yet another strong female lead. But I'm glad we have so many female leads, but they have to start fixing the problems of not having strong enough male characters next to them. Well, Tom Hiddleston's supposed to be in this film, and I think he's a very good choice. And hopefully, he'll find a role finally outside of Loki, which I think, shows him off in another great, spectacular manner. Because right now, everything else I think has been underwhelming. So I think that Legendary, because of their announcements and because of their product and because of their booth on the floor, they came in second. And that leaves Marvel for third. Now the other studios barely even place. Fox, no comic book coverage at all. Paramount, Interstellar, oh, we don't want to tell you about it. Okay, well, what are you going to tell us about? Oh, nothing? Thanks a lot, Paramount. And then Sony, I guess, I'd say Sony, is really, maybe even if I was in like a really bad mood, I would say that, and just because Marvel's Marvel, obviously it comes in ahead of Sony, but Sony did a very nice job, I think, getting a lot of attention for Goosebumps. So I think credit has to be given to them for what they did. And DreamWorks Animation showed up, nothing. And then, of course, Disney, outside of Marvel, didn't even bother to compete, where there was no Star Wars, there was no Disney Animation. And one has to wonder if it's because of the D23 Expo. They're trying, of course, very hard to make that a big event. And you might recall that last year they held off on a lot of announcements because they wanted to save it all for their own convention. So maybe that's partially what's going on here. I speculated earlier today in my review of the Marvel panel that maybe they just couldn't sign Joaquin Phoenix in time. But, it's Kevin Feige's responsibility to have a backup plan. He only had, one surprise in store, and it was the Doctor Strange casting? It just seems unprofessional to me. So Marvel, I feel, just really phoned it in across the board. They had, just this really small signing at their booth, same booth as always. But this year they lacked even an amazing reveal. But in the past, it's been, for instance, remember when it was Thor's, Odin's throne from the Thor films? That was really awesome. And then they used to have Captain America's locker, which was cool to see. And this year they have the Ant-Man helmet, and that's about it. And I think it would have been really nice to see something else, just anything. And they just basically were distributing posters over there on the floor. And I think that they could do better. And also, I think it's time to end this practice of not releasing the footage to the general public that they show at the convention. If you want to save it for a few days, fine. Everyone at the convention gets to see it first. But I think that it just really sucks the interest out of, and the excitement out of the rest of us who are not there in Hall H. And even, in the past when I've attended Comic-Con, I couldn't even get into Hall H. Getting into Hall H is almost ridiculous. And I think it makes it more exciting for those who do accomplish the feat, but they have to realize that, that's about 5,000 to 6,000 people in there tops, and you need a lot more than that to see your movie. And it's just, I think I would give it maybe 2 or 3 days, but they should be releasing this footage the beginning, it should be coming out tomorrow or Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, right after the con for everybody else to see. But it's not, and Kevin Feige said it's going to be a very long time before you see this Avengers Age of Ultron footage. DC didn't even address it. Probably will never be shown, and because it's that's 2 years away. But hey, come on, play the game. So I'm very disappointed, and part of me believes that in addition to the D23 Expo, trying to make that a big event, perhaps all the studios have decided that, this is a little bit of, tugging back on the chain around not just Comic-Con's neck, but fandom's neck, saying, remember who's in charge. We don't have to tell you anything we don't want to tell you. And I can tell you from previous experiences, hearing things behind the scenes, the people who run Comic-Con out of San Diego aren't the most beloved. They're a little bit, dictatorship, and perhaps the studios are tired of it. They're like, we don't want to be so reliant on Comic-Con. It's expensive. We don't want to, invest so much time and money in this and work on someone else's schedule. So maybe that's what's going on here. But I think whatever the reason is for this decision not to have any big reveals, any big pictures, footage, posters, even the Mad Max Fury Road posters were just, spiffier looking versions of the photos that came out to Entertainment Weekly just a few weeks ago. Where were those Hobbit the Five Armies? They showed this really long, expansive poster. Where is that? Why is there not even a poster released? So no matter what the reasoning is, it was a mistake. And I'm curious if you guys feel as strongly as I do. And how do you feel about Comic-Con? Are you going to be as excited for next year? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And for those of you who attended Comic-Con, it's a very expensive endeavor. It can cost thousands of dollars to go there, and it's really hard to get a room. It's hard to get a ticket. It's hard to get into Hall H. It's hard to navigate just the convention floor. It's hard to get food. It's so crowded. But what always makes it worth it is that it's just a party. It's so exciting. It's shock and awe, and there's no shock, and there is a shock, but it's a bad one, and there's certainly no awe. So that's who I think won Comic-Con. I'm very curious to how you would rate the studios and the presentations. Who do you think won? Please give your reasoning and tell me what you think of Comic-Con in general and what this means for movies, comic book movies in general. And next year, maybe we should all just buy our tickets for D23 next year. It's every other year, and so I guess if you can only spend so much money, that's where you should go.